Let's get it. This is another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Thank you, and I welcome you all to another episode, another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, and hopefully, in your mind and in your heart, I'm your family, Rashid, and I like to talk to you all about a few things. I want to make one correction from the last program that we did yesterday. Now I'm back at Walmart again. This time my son is in Walmart, so guys, you got to give me a chance to just talk to you all for a few minutes while the ride lasts. Okay, but I didn't want to leave the show from yesterday just out there. I gave you my word that we'd be doing another live today, and a person is measured not only by their words but their actions. So I gave you my word, and I'm following up with actions. Now I want to address something. I was talking about a few things yesterday that got under some people's skin because I pointed out the hypocrisy of the Western world and the racism and the exceptionalism in the mind of the Western world. And I knew that was going to offend a lot of people. But sometimes that is for the benefit, for the long-term benefit. Because if you get offended by truth, and after you study and after you do your due diligence and you realize what the person said was the truth, and if you say that you are somebody who respects the truth and loves the truth and love God because God is truth, right? Then after a while, after it sits in, you'll say, you know what? I shouldn't have been offended by what they said because what they said was the truth, okay? And so this is how my platform is, and this is how I try to get over to the people. I know sometimes I might come at you in a way that may be offensive. It is to get your attention. And once you are offended, people like to go at the person who offended them, but they have to go at them with the right reasoning, the right strategy, and the right mind. That means that you are forced then to do your research to see whether or not what I offended you with was the truth or was a lie, right? And if you find out that it's the truth, guess what happens? You're no longer offended if you are a lover of the truth. You start to recognize that what he said was the truth. The way he said it, I didn't like it, but hey, the underlying meaning of what he said is absolutely the truth. Now, I said something yesterday. I made a mistake on something when I talked about the alleviation of homelessness at $5 billion, right? And because I was speaking on a lot of issues. And so I want to make a correction on that. I was doing my research right before we went on air, and I just put in, and you can put in these words. I try to tell you exactly what to put in so that you can get the same info that I get. I put in $5 billion would alleviate homelessness in the U.S., right? Now, this is what came up, and this is the truth because I did a show on this, and I don't know why it slipped my mind when I was saying this. It says, how much would ending homeless in the U.S. cost? And it says, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. Now, I should have known that because I did a show on that maybe about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, right? Now, why am I bringing this up? Because it has everything to do with U.S. policy. It has everything to do with the meeting and villainous in Europe between America and her NATO minions, okay? It is very important that you understand why I brought this up. I'm not bringing stuff up just out the blue. Let's finish reading this, and then we'll address this, and we'll connect it with the situation in Vilnius and in Kyiv and in Moscow and in Washington, D.C., and in London and in Paris and in Berlin and in Brussels, okay? Now, I have comments in here, too. Let me see the comments real quick. Ah, my guy, Astral Atmosphere is here. That adapt to your charger, like and share. Yeah. You should get a mic that adapt to your charger. Okay. Let's see. So let me scroll a bit. Okay. I see you in the chat. Okay. Now listen. I want to finish reading this because again, this goes to the heart of what's going on in Vilnius and in Europe between America and NATO nations. And it lies at the heart of what is happening in Moscow, in Kyiv, or Kiev, whichever way you want to pronounce it, and Brussels, and London, and Paris, and Berlin, and D.C., okay? It says, how much would ending homelessness in the U.S. cost? Now, it said, and this is the body of what is written after that. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. That is a big number, yes, but let's put it into perspective. Americans spend $19 billion a year on unplugged appliances. Americans spend more than $35 billion a year on gym memberships. Now, stop right there. Now, why would they compare that to a person buying appliances and gym membership? Why didn't they put that on the back of the government? Because in actuality, every penny that the government spends is on your back. Now, how is that connected to Vilnius? How is that connected to Moscow, Kiev, Brussels, London, Paris, DC, and in Berlin? I want you to understand something. By America's open acknowledgments and admissions, she has given the government, the proxy government in Kiev, over between $100 billion and $130 billion, right? Now, she is more concerned, NATO is more concerned with providing weapons and promoting war than to alleviate poverty or homelessness in America. Now, how could that benefit Europe? If America would have taken 1/5 of the money that she gave to the weapons manufacturers and the money that she's using to bribe NATO nations that don't see eye to eye with her, and the money that she is using to overthrow other leadership around the globe, she could have alleviated homelessness. Listen to me good. Think about the burden that would have been relieved off of the American taxpayer. Think about the burden that would have been relieved off of the American economy, which in turn means that Europe benefits, which in turn means that the UK benefits, because both of those, the UK and the European Union, all benefit from American prosperity, right? But being so arrogant and so in love with war and trying to promote their thinking and their domination, they're actually laying economic thermite at the base of the American empire and at the base of Western domination, if you understand what I'm saying. Only a fraction of what was given to the arms makers, what was given to promote war. And now remember that this does not include the money that America pays to run the Ukrainian government, because every penny comes from the West. This does not talk about the trips and stuff back and forth and all of the other stuff that comes with that and the propaganda machine. We're just talking about the acknowledged money given to promote, prosecute, and perpetuate a war of choice and a war of aggression against Russia. If only 1/5 or 1/6 of that money would have been invested back in America, homelessness in a nation of 368 million people would have been eradicated, meaning that now you have more people able to work, more people able to consume and buy things, more people able to pay for health care, food, and all of this stuff, and invest in businesses and invest in education, which means that a huge economic burden would be off the people and off the nation, which means in turn the nation that America trades with, the UK and the European Union, would have been better off if 1/5 or 1/6 of the money that is used to perpetrate and prosecute an illegal war of aggression against Russia would have been used at home. I want you to understand what that means to you. That means that America shows little interest in the security of America. She constantly says that what she does is for national security. What is more national than the people? Because the people are what makes up the nation, right? And if there's no domestic security, how in the hell can you look outwards talking about national security? If the people can't feed themselves, if they can't house themselves, if they can't get a proper and beneficial education, if the people are so stressed out on bills and debt, how can that be a stable cog in a so-called quote-unquote viable economy, a viable nation. In reality, if those things are happening, guess what happens? There are bombs ready to detonate at the very core of the republic. Because you have anger rising in the midst, you have insurrection, you have rebellion, and you have all of the recipes and the ingredients in a pot that is boiling that says revolution and war at home. There's an old African proverb, as I always says. I always use this proverb because I think it's apt, it's meaningful, and it is beneficial for all. And it talks about, if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm. So if America would take on her own domestic problems, she wouldn't have to worry about international ones, because she'd be too busy solving the plight and the problems of the people within her own borders. But this is not just isolated with America. This is in London or the UK. This is in Brussels or the EU. They are so concerned about dominating the geopolitical landscape, the global political scene, and the global economic scene, that they neglect home. And you can only do that for so long before there's a bubble up of anger, resentment. And people, then when the people bubble up like that, guess what happens? You have protests, you have insurrection, and you have war within our own borders. This is not for rocket scientists. This is just the average person just using common sense, okay? Common sense. Again, let me read this to you, because this is very important that I read this to you, okay? And I'm trying to get the dashboard also, because let me see something. Let me go to something. I want to play something. It's an old clip that I played that goes hand in hand with this. Where is it about the Mike Maloof? Like, all right, there it is right there. So listen to this. And I see you, YouTube disconnecting viewers. Also, I want to say this, that YouTube, to the algorithm and to the YouTube people that govern this platform, I would ask you right here, live on air, would you please stop unsubscribing my subscribers? Would you please stop holding down my viewership and my viewer count? I would really appreciate it if you would stop doing that. Okay, that would be a meaningful thing for me. I would really appreciate it if you stopped doing it. All right. I saw what you were doing. I saw what you did yesterday also, YouTube. I haven't mentioned it live, but I saw what you did on my dashboard, okay? But let's go further. Let's read this again, because I'm going to play what Mike Maloof says, and it puts it all in perspective when you look at what's going on with the war in Ukraine, the war that is being fomented in Sudan, the wars that are being fomented in Yemen, the wars that are being fomented all across the north region of Africa. The war that America is trying to foment between China and her surrounding areas and her so-called breakaway province of Chinese Taipei or Taiwan. I want you to look at this. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so this is a government-funded, government-run institution, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, right? This is the conclusion that they came up with. It would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. Think about that. 20 billion. 1/5 or 1/6 of the acknowledged money that America gave to the corrupt oligarchs and the war profiteers and all of these weapons manufacturers for an illegal, unjust war against Russia and Ukraine. And while the masses of Americans are suffering. If that is not a spit in the face, a slap in the face, and a punch in the eye, and a kick in the gut to the people who taxes are taken to run the government, you tell me what is. Listen what Mike Maloof says about the funny money budget and bookkeeping that the USA talks about. Now remember, if they publicly acknowledge between $100 and $130 billion, we'll multiply that by like 2 or 3 times, okay? and not including the kickbacks that the people who pass the bills and who vote the bills and the president who signed off on the bills get in their back in their pockets in these kickbacks. Okay, we're just going to go about the acknowledged times 2 or 3. Look at what Mike Maloof has to say about this again. I want you to pay close attention to this. I know I played this before, but this has everything to do with what's going on with in villainous as the war parties meet together for more escalation and provocation, while the people in America, the people in Europe, the people in the UK are suffering. And the people, by extension, in Africa and Latin America and Asia are suffering and will suffer at the hands of these hegemonic racist policymakers. Okay? I want you to listen to this.
Now, this may come as a surprise or not to some of you. US officials may be stretching the truth when it comes to the real cost of funding the country's war machine. That is according to an American foreign policy think tank whose report concluded that the actual numbers are much higher than what makes it out for public consumption. According to the paper, the Pentagon's official top line for the 2024 budget was highlighted, that top figure, around $800 billion. However, the real cost of Washington's expenses for next year is said to be closer to $1.5 trillion. The report by the Responsible Statecraft Institute also alleges the Budget Control Act passed in 2011 gave rise to a slew of gimmicks aimed at escaping budget controls, including use of the term base budget, which includes only peacetime expenses. As for war-related costs, the Defense Department and Congress reportedly load tens of billions into a slush fund, which is then not reflected in the official numbers. Well, former senior security policy analyst in the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Michael Maloof, says that budget control loopholes in Washington are designed to favor the Defense Department.
The Overseas Contingency Fund is another hidden boondoggle for special operations, and it doesn't have to be reported to the Congress. And that in itself is tens of billions of dollars. Not to mention the fact that the Pentagon every quarter goes back for so-called supplements, and by the time it's all said and done, it's well over $1 trillion. And frankly, this is why procurement and the budget people have never been able to get their hands around what the actual costs are, or to delineate in any way to Congress how much is being spent. Let's say, for example, in Afghanistan, they don't want to tie their hands, and in many cases there are, as I say, waivers to implementation and even to deadlines. So while I'm not a budget expert, I've seen from the inside certain ways things are completed, how they're calculated, and how they try to end run the system. That they have these loopholes in order to ultimately give the departments, particularly the Defense Department, most especially the Defense Department, what it wants and when it wants it.
So, do you see that? They constantly lie to you about the amount of money that they're spending on war material, and to prop up these illegal governments and these illegal leaders that have been imposed on nations and people. Now, I want you to think about this. If they would have taken that $130 billion and would have invested $20 billion, they could have eradicated homelessness in America, took another $20 billion and invested in education. Now we have $40 billion, okay? Meaning that this $40 billion would not be so much for education, but it would be to give a rise in pay to the stewards of future leaders, politicians, doctors, lawyers, scientists, and engineers, right? That means that's investing in your future. That's investing in progression as a society. Then you take the another $20 billion and you invest in the educational system itself. So now we're at $60 billion, right? Now, then you take 20 more and invest in small businesses to grow them, right? And to attract new minds and new schools of thought so that they can build an economy that is not based on service economies, right? That's not based on exploitation to stay ahead. That's 80 billion. And then if you take 20 more billion and invest in the justice system to try to reorganize the so-called justice system and the political system, making it more fair and more just, $100 billion could have made America a little bit better than she is today, and it could have also enhanced her economic prowess and her political standing globally. We see without that, nations are fleeing the dollar. Nations they're working on alternative systems outside of the SWIFT system, outside of Visa, MasterCard, outside of the U.S. dominated IMF and World Bank. The crazy thing about this is the people in power and the people who make policy claim to be very smart, and they talk about their bachelors and this degree and that degree and all of that, and they seem to be the stupidest people on the planet, because the simplest things sometimes work the best, and they have to go for all these schemes and intricate things that are bringing down the empire. Right now, I want to say to show you how corrupt this is, I was reading something. I'm trying to find it right now. It was about Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, I can't find it at this moment. But Joe Biden got mad that I believe Rand Paul and a few other people introduced a bill for accountability for where the money is going in Ukraine. And he was adamant about not auditing where the money was going in Ukraine, saying that we already have 2 committees to do that. We shouldn't have a 3rd committee. Now, on face value, that's true. But we know that the 2 committees that are charged to do this haven't done their job, right? So why don't you just eradicate those 2 committees and reinvest the money with the new money into another committee, and then do the research on where the money is coming from? And why so much opposition from the president and his administration on accountability? It's because of the kickbacks, the corruption. Joe Biden is dripping in Ukraine blood. Joe Biden is dripping in Russian blood. Joe Biden is dripping in the blood of those in the Caucasus and in the Baltics. He's dripping in that because he's making a killing off of that. And literally, I mean, he's literally making a killing off of it. Figuratively and literally making a killing off of it. He and his family. They are a crime syndicate. This is what I'm telling you. He is talking about he would not sign the bill. We don't need that. He is adamant against the accountability. And one would ask, why? Why? Because we know he has economic ties to Ukraine. And we know that his son sat on one of the boards of the companies in Ukraine prior to the war in Ukraine and thereafter. And Joe Biden is one of the main instigators of the war in Ukraine. And he continues to escalate to the detriment of the Ukrainians and the Russians, but to the benefit of the war propagandists and the weapons makers. So it has to be some type of kickback coming back to Joe Biden, and it has to be some type of kickback coming back to old Hunter. You know, I mean, it is crazy. These people are corrupt as hell, evil as hell. And then they'll go, and what's crazy about it is when you see Joe Biden, you see Hunter, then you see the administration leaders, you know, in each department. Then you see the people in villainous in Europe, these leaders of NATO. They are disregarding the security of states around the globe and the lives of those people that belong to those states around the globe. And then they'll go sit in a church and pray. They'll go sit in there and give fellowship and communion. As their policies of bumming the hell out of people, drone striking the hell out of people, stealing people money through sanctions, and robbing these people and assassinating people, as though that doesn't count. That comes from a racist, exceptional mind. I keep telling you this. Let me see the comments. Let me go back to the comments real quick. Um, Green Lord, let me put this up on the screen. Green Lord says, "The hell you say? Kickbacks for the big guy? You, hey, isn't that what he said in that audio when Hunter Biden was talking about they got to give some money or some kickbacks to the big guy, referring to the president, referring to his father, right? Isn't that what they said? I mean, corruption. These people are corrupt as hell, and that's why. Listen, I'm apolitical. I don't get involved in the political process because it is corrupt to the very core, right? I just call an ace and a spade a spade. Now, these people do all of this, ignoring the livelihoods of the domestic people and the people in the international arena, all for the sake of profit, all for the sake of power. See, they become what they say. Power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. So America has enjoyed unrivaled, unparalleled influence, power, and wealth for the last 60, 70, 80 years. Unrivaled. The West has benefited off that, and they have been going hand over foot to try to maintain that, right? To the detriment of the populations of their nations, but more so to the population of the planet Earth. Because remember, America and the NATO nations do not comprise 1/10 of the population of the planet Earth. So that means that they are ravaging and raping 9/10 of the planet Earth for profit. And we can even go further and say that they're raping almost the entire planet because they don't even care about their own population. Look at how poverty is exploding in Europe and in the UK. The food banks, just like in America, the food banks can't handle the capacity because people are lining up down blocks to try to get something to eat. Look at this. They're not just raping the globe, they're raping their own population, and they're giving it to them with no Vaseline. That's what they're doing. They are sodomizing their own population and making them like it. Because, I'm a patriot, I'm this and I'm that. How dare you speak ill of the military? Well, if the military is doing wrong things, you're supposed to call them out on it. Hell, I'm not just going to stand in line just because you say, I'm a patriot. Man, the hell with that. Wrong is wrong and right is right. That's what my mom used to always say. Wrong is wrong and right is right. And if you're wrong, I'm going to call you out because you're wrong. And if you're right, I'm going to give you kudos and praise and credit that you're right. But in this bizarro world, up is down, down is up, in is out, out is in, blue is black, brown is purple, and everything is thrown on its head. And if you speak the truth, you become the outcast, right? Listen to this. Let me go to something here. Man, Joe Biden is crazy as hell. I'm going to pass this one right here. Now, we see the West. I'm getting a message right here also while I'm talking to y'all. We see that they continue to try to impose their will on everybody, like in Uganda. And like in some of the African nations, after these nations, like Ghana, they say, listen, we are not against homosexuals. We are against homosexuality. Do not try to force feed us your culture, your dictates, and your policies, because that doesn't work here. We have our own culture. We have our own policies. We have our own interests. And what you want does not go with what we want. What you are accustomed to is not what we are accustomed to. So the United States is trying to push the gay agenda down the throat of the Ugandans. They're trying to push it down the throat of the Ghanaians. And they have been soundly rejected and rebuffed in Africa. Now, of course, they're making a little headway here and there. They're doing it in Latin America. They're doing it across Europe. They're trying to make Vladimir Putin to be an enemy because he rejects endorsing homosexuality. Right? Now, and then this stuff right here, it bothers me sometimes because you can't say I'm homophobic. All right? Because we all know that most people have multiple people in their families who are that way. Not one time have I ever thought of them different than who I am. Not one time have I ever disrespected them. I even knew some people. I know a whole bunch of people like that, you know. But I'm saying, on the one hand, you want to say, well, this has nothing to do with you, and I should be able to act the way I want to act and do this. Okay, then don't try to shove it down my throat. If you put it in my living room, I'm going to rebuff it. If you put it down, I'm going to push it back. If that's what you want to do it behind your walls. Don't bring it into mine. Because that's not how it's going to go. I'm not against you. I'm against the acts that you do. There's a difference. There's a difference. So this agenda that they have, they continue to try to force feed it in movies and music and culture and magazines and on the internet. This is how they do before they overthrow governments. The stuff that they once condemned, when they see that they can use it to further their policy move, what they'll do, they'll break down the resistance to that slowly but surely through propaganda, through the movies, through TV, through radio, through magazines, and now through the internet. And when you once looked as though you stood for justice 10 years ago, you look like you're out of date today, right? And then you become the villain. You become the villain. This is what they do. That's how they program you through their organs of programming. That media is a hell of a drug, and it can make you feel out of place, and it can make you feel wrong. But listen to me, for those of you who are listening, if you are guided by the principles of God, to hell with what the media say. To hell with what the government say. The government ain't God. I don't care how much they think they are. I don't care what kind of policies and laws they pass. They are not the creator. And if I'm all right with the creator, well, you know what? Well, it's all right with me. Even if I'm out of place in today's society. You understand? So, we see, I want to talk to you all about the Wagner Group too on the next, on one of the next programs. Remember how I was getting condemned from the stuff that I was saying, right? It's amazing how a turn of event is going on right now, right? Recognizing that, hey, Putin did meet with the Wagner people. This agreement did happen. I was telling you all this, and all of the major alternative media were condemning what I was saying. And I even talked about that on the program, and now look what's happening, right? But we'll go back on that on another show. Listen, I want to ask you something for everybody. Black, brown, red, yellow, white, purple, polka dot, green, whichever color, race, or whatever you want to call yourself, okay? I want to ask you something. Now, if I went around the world overthrowing governments, and if I went around the world disregarding national sovereignty and the will of the people, and also at the same time disregarded the sovereignty and the will of the people that I'm supposed to represent, does that make me a leader, a good leader? Does that make me a democratic leader? Huh? I'm asking you all this. Well, if it doesn't, then why? Just because you live in America, and just because you served in the military of America, and just because you have been a politician of America, why would you think that that would make America and the leadership of America good? She's exceptional. So it doesn't make me good for murdering, killing, robbing, stealing, and everything else. But it will make America good because you are an American. Let's see. Short-sighted for sure. Yeah, it seems short-sighted. Green Lord, green light, seems short-sighted. Could you elaborate on what you which comment, Green Lord? I'm gonna put this on the screen, then I want you to elaborate on this, and then I'll look back down in the comment and I'll address it. Okay? I don't, I don't know, but listen, excuse me. Why is it so much when we call out people for the wrongs that they've done in the Western world? It's unacceptable. Why do we always point the finger at everybody else? Oh, Assad is a tyrant. Do you know, speaking of Assad, do you know that the Jimmy Carter Institution, the institute that goes around the world, excuse me, and monitor elections, do you know that they ratified the election that took place in Syria, even under war conditions, and they were astonished how free and fair the elections were under war conditions? Listen to me good. With Assad winning 75 to 85% of the vote under war conditions. And remember that the part of Syria that he controls has like 80% of the population of Syria, right? Now, if that is the case and he won, and I think what Syria is like 25 million people, something like that, and he won 75 to 85% of the vote, how can he be a dictator and a tyrant? When Macron can't muster half of that. You know what I'm talking about, the president of France. When the chancellor of Germany can't muster a third of that. When Joe Biden is still to be determined about the election that brought him to power. What about the successive governments in the UK that can't even muster 50% of the backing of the people? So how is Assad garnering 75 to 85% of the vote in a war environment? A sign of him being a dictator and a brutal leader, and yet the Western leaders who accuse him of that can't muster half of that in their own population, and they're the legitimate leaders of democracy. How the hell that works? Tell me how that works. Vladimir Putin, in a nation of 158 million people, Russia, the Russian Federation, has an approval rating that goes between 78 and 90%, up and down, like not anywhere near 60, not anywhere near 50. It's always 78 to 90+% of the people of Russia approves of his job and how he's running the nation. And he is a tyrant and a dictator. And he's repressing his own people, according to the West. And then when you turn the reflective glass around and point it at the Western leaders, you see that they've come to office by hook or by crook and can't muster even 60% of what Vladimir Putin has mustered. And they say that they are defenders of the free world. They are defenders of democracy. Make that make sense. Huh? And we'll talk about Xi Jinping in a minute. Let me see something. Grand Lord said, if you're going to go into another land, okay, let me highlight this. He's elaborating on what he just said before. He said, if you're going to go into another land, pushing your agenda without considering the culture, religion, etc., it will bring major problems down the bam. Green Lord, I bow, because I couldn't have said it any clearer or any better than this. This will stay up for a minute. This right here will stay up for a minute. I couldn't have said it any better or any clearer than what you put right there. Thank you for elaborating on your previous comment. We need this right here. Now, let's go to Xi Jinping. And by the way, hit the like button. You know, when people do a job, they get paid, right? I'm doing this. I'm not getting paid. I can get paid through super chats and through super thanks and through Cash App. I got all of that stuff. But right now, I just want to talk to you for a minute. You can support the channel if you want to, but I like you to get those thumbs up or thumbs down. It doesn't matter. Just hit one of them. All right. And also recommend the channel and subscribe. And if you want to, you can help even more by becoming a patron, or you can become at patreon.com/the Red Pill Diaries, or you can go over to the locals channel and join, because we're going to start doing live streams. We're going to try to do it this week. Also, you can become a channel member here. All right, appreciate that, everything. Now, they say Xi Jinping is a dictator. I want you to understand something. In a nation of 1.5 billion people, it says 1.49 billion. We just rounded to the nearest number, 1.5 billion people, okay? This man, we're going to just go with the lowest estimate by the Western world. He has a approval rating of, say, 70%. Well, let's just say 60%. All right? Now, half of 1.5 billion people is what? 750 million people, right? Which is almost commensurate with the population of the European Union and some of America, right? Now, I want you to look at that, because sometimes we don't analyze this. So we're going to go with the lowest amount. We say that's 50%. Now you tack on another 10%. This man has, if we go just by the lowest estimate of Western analysts, this man has an approval rating the size from the people, the size of the population of America and the European Union put together. But he's illegitimate and he's a dictator. How is that even? I mean, how can you even say something like that? Huh? How can you even bring your mouth to even speak something like that? When even if we say 60%, it is still better than any Western leader. And when you look at the size of the population of them, and you say this man is commanding the support of the population of the United States and all of Europe combined, how in the hell can he be a dictator? I'm asking, because I'm lost on this one. Now, let me see something real quick while I'm talking to you all. See, I told you, we like to talk. We like to chat with each other. We're family. If you like truth, we're family. If you love God, we're family. Right? We're family. Now listen what it says right here. Let's go to this article right here. It says, NATO spent years preparing for proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. Now think about the years that it spent. Go back to something. Think about the years that it spent arming, training, and propagandizing the population of Ukraine and the military of Ukraine and its surrounding areas. Think about the tens of billions of dollars that were used. Hell, Victoria Nuland said they used at least $5 billion to overthrow the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych. So if they just used that just to overthrow the government, think about the tens of billions that preceded, that followed that. And now, look at the situation with the job crisis in America. Look at the situation with the job crisis in Europe and in the UK. Look at the food crisis. Look at the health crisis. Look at the judicial crisis. Look at the political crisis. That money would have been well spent within the borders of the US, the UK, and the EU instead of trying to overthrow a government in Ukraine to make war with the Russian Federation. Huh? I know this can't just be me. I mean, common sense is not so common today, right? So it says, even before the Ukraine conflict escalated in February 2022, Britain, Sweden, Canada, and the United States were investing in Ukraine and building up their capabilities. The UK defense minister has stated that at the NATO summit in Vilnius, I think it's called Vilnius. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. And it says, does it mean NATO has long prepared for a proxy war with Russia? Now let's look at this, okay? Because it started way before that. I want to give you some insight onto this, okay? America had plans to do what she's doing prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, this just gave more impetus for them to do it. If you look prior to going into Ukraine, you see Zbigniew Brzezinski, you see all of these prognosticators and geostrategists and geopoliticians, you see all of them writing books and writing essays and writing reports to all of these Western and U.S. think tanks, right, about what should be done to promote the United States as the only hyperpower or global superpower, and to keep any rival or combination of rival nations from challenging American power. Now, when we look at that, what happened? America knew that Russia was weak. America knew that Russia was in a state of chaos after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But they also knew this, that Russia will fight to the end, and that Russia still had the largest arsenal of nuclear weapons on the planet, right? So instead of confronting Russia head on, they befriended them in order to weaken them. And all while signing these agreements, they knew that they would never, hey, this guy almost hit my car. Hold on one second. Hey, you better watch how you're driving. I'm sorry, you guys. Guy coming here just swinging his car around. Anyway, people crazy as hell. But anyway, now they signed all of these communiques and agreements for nuclear disarmament, missile for inspections and on each other's territory, and all of this. And man, America and NATO was doing it to gain insight on the workings of the Russian government and the Russian military, and to see what assets pose the greatest threat to American hegemony and NATO's progression to be the ultimate war machine. And so, in friendship, that was a Trojan horse. What they did, instead of openly attacking Russia, was to attack Russia's periphery. And what I mean by that is to invest money in former Soviet territories and investing in the propaganda, the media wing, so that they can change and rewrite the history, and then use the media to amplify certain disagreements with ethnic minorities and create ethnic tension and strife, and then to play them against Russia and ethnic Russians and make them gravitate towards the West, right? This is what they were doing. And while that was going on, guess what they were doing? They didn't think that they underestimated China. So they didn't think China would dare be a threat, or a threat that it is militarily, economically, and politically right now. So while they focused on Russia, this is what they did along with what I just told you. They started to wage war on all of the nations that were once allied with Russia, or that were trading partners with Russia, or that were huge buyers of Russian weaponry and military gear. So once you change the government, guess what the nation did? Realigned itself with the West and got on the Western economic thing, and then started buying Western hardware, which has multiple effects. It weakens Russia's political influence outside of the Russian Federation. It gives America a foothold into a land that was not hers. It gives America another trading partner while depriving Russia of a trading partner that it had. And then it strengthens the U.S. and the Western military industrial complex, because now they have new hosts that they can latch on to continue to bleed them and suck them dry economically. So they went after nation after nation. It's no coincidence that Wesley, what is his name? The former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Wesley, what is his name? I forget his name. But he talked about America had a plan to bomb 7 nations in 5 years. And it's ironic that these 7 nations were all trading partners or weapons buyers from Russia, or allies from Russia. All of them. Or they were considered to be Russia's underbelly, like Iran. Because they tried Afghanistan, because they see the strategic area where it sits, and they wanted to destabilize China, Pakistan, Russia, and while India got on board with them, they didn't realize that America was going to use that to keep them down too. things didn't work out the way that they wanted them to, but they always wanted Iran. Dick Cheney say anybody, the former vice president, who is a international war criminal and one of the main proponents and instigators of 9/11, Richard Dick Cheney said anybody can go to Baghdad, but real men go to Tehran. Meaning that they wanted war. The ultimate goal was to make war with Iran, because if they get Afghanistan and they've gotten Iran, they are now in the underbelly of their two prime targets, China and Russia. And they can not only foment instability, but then they can weaken them in their own neighborhood and have them preoccupied with trying to defend their near abroad, which leaves America to be able to use a decapitating, in their mind, first strike to destroy them. This has been their plan for the longest, right? This has been their plan for the longest. And this is what they tried to do. But they didn't get the job done, right? But this is NATO's plan. Listen, I'm not saying that. Go get Shadow Wars, that book there. And I forget, I think it's Ghost of Afghanistan. I got it on my shelf. I forget what it's called. And then get the Brzezinski's. You know, Mika Brzezinski, the one that used to be, I don't know, because I don't watch the news, the mainstream news anymore. But Mika Brzezinski, who was with was on the show Morning Joe on MSNBC. That's her father. That is her father. And you notice how the media continues to recycle the elite. How these people like George Stephanopoulos and Rahm Emanuel and all these people continue to play musical chairs in politics and economics, and all of these people are war criminals and agents of the CIA and all of these alphabet agencies to keep American and Western hegemony going straight, and to also weaken any opposition, and to delegitimize any opposition to Western policy and Western plans. That's why what is his name? Anderson Cooper, CNN, CIA agent. Wolf Blitzer, Mossad and CIA agent. Right? These people are not getting these jobs by chance. All of these people. What is Fareed Zakaria, a member of one of those commissions, like the Trilateral Commission. I don't think it's the Trilateral Commission, but it's the other commission. He's on that. All of these people play their role in trying to maintain empire at all costs, and most people don't know it, and most people don't understand it, because it takes effort, it takes time, it takes sacrifice to look into these people and to look into their policies and to call it what it is. These people are megalomaniacs. Their policies are erratic policies for domination, and they are fascist, racist, and exceptionalists. Right? To give you an example, in Vilnius, I think that's how you pronounce it, Joe Biden talks about American leadership. He often talks about this, and all Western leaders talk about this, especially U.S. leaders. They talk about a new order and America's role and how America must lead. Right? That's not exceptionalism. Why must America lead? I ask this question all the time. Why must America lead? The planet has 8+ billion people on it. Right? 8+ billion people on it. My son has just made it here. 8+ billion people on it. Why does America feel that she has to lead 8 billion people? Huh? How come she doesn't feel that she has to offer advice and receive advice? No, I have to dictate the terms. This is her mind state. I must dictate. I must be in command. I must be in control. That's that Nebuchadnezzar, right? And Belshazzar. I wish I had the Bible in front of me. I would read a chapter to you that goes hand in hand, which shows you America in there, in the fall. This is the fall of America. You guys don't understand it. This is why you say, well, why would American leaders do this? And why would Western leaders do this? Because they are being confused. The confusion of the people, right? This is the time of the confusion of the leaders. Let us look at the leadership of Great Britain. Let us look at the leadership of the past European leaders who have ruled the global scene. And let us look at the leadership today of America, who has been the #1 and the paramount power globally. Each one of the ones that preceded America led to America. Now let's see where America has led the world to with those previous leaders in a union, a military, political, and economic union, because all of them are in a political, economic, and military union. That's why they call it the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization. All right. We are on the cusp of World War III. We see the economy, the global economy, in meltdown mode. We see global strife and insurrection, dissatisfaction, and fatalism. Right? We see depression and hopelessness, despair. We see racial divide, a cultural divide. Now remember, all of this is taking place on America's watch. So if we see the tangible fruits of America's leadership, why the hell do we want it anymore? We're close to thermonuclear war, and she's still talking about she has to rule. We see that the leadership has proven to be a failure. The Western world's leadership has proven to be a failure. And if it is proven to be a failure, which we see that it has been proven to be a failure, why would we want failed policy and failed leaders to lead the world? Huh? That is a lunatic mind to think that, oh, because I'm from America, or because I'm from the West, or because I'm this, that I'm better than everybody else, and I must dictate and I must come. Why? Look where we at under your leadership. And anybody who knows truth knows I'm telling you the truth. And anybody who is looking at this knows that America has led the world towards outright, total Armageddon, right? We know this. We know that the world stands on the cusp of our all-out war. We know that. No doubt about it. No questions to it. No arguments against it, because the facts are the facts. And if that is the case, then why the hell would you want a megalomaniac leading the world? Now we see what it's doing, how it's threatening and condemning nations because of its military powers, sanctioning people that don't want to get on board with its lunatic exceptional policies, and it's pushing the world towards all-out global warfare. Not just global conventional warfare, but it's pushing the world towards all-out nuclear warfare. Now, let's look at the sane and rational people. Do you want somebody to lead you like that? Do you want a leadership like that? And if you don't want a leadership like that, then why would you accept American leadership? Why would you accept the Western leadership? We got to use common sense when we're dealing with this stuff, man. A lot of you guys don't want to use common sense because guess what? It's a black eye on Western supremacy. Well, you didn't give them the black eye. They gave them the black eye. And they continue to punch themselves in the eye every day with the policies that they try to force feed other people. You can go in there for a few minutes, okay? That's where you wanted to go?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be out here for a minute. I'm going to finish up the screen. And you can go. I'm going to pull up right here, then I'll back in. Yeah. But anyway, I spend a lot of time with my family, man. I'm a family man. I'm a family man. All right. I'm a family man. And I like spending time with my family and doing things with my family and doing things for my family. You know, we don't know how much time we have here. We don't know how much time they have here. And we're supposed to live life and enjoy life and give God the glory while we're here, and overlook a lot of the things that would have us mad, because this thing, you get one shot at this thing called life, and you got to make the most of it. And the most of it is not dictating to everybody else. The most of it is not having the most money. See, the mentality of these people is they put their wealth I mean, their worth in wealth. They put their policies on people to extract wealth so that they can say, I'm worth this amount, or we're the richest country in the world, or we're the richest people in the world. I'm worth $3.5 billion. I'm worth this and worth that. Well, what if that money loses value? Then if the money becomes worthless, what are you? Worthless. So you're supposed to build up a wealth from inside. The kingdom of God is within you, right? You're supposed to polish and nourish that godness or that goodness inside of you. And don't put your wealth in numbers of money or material things, because that's fool's gold. That's fool's gold. And that's the problem with the Western world. That's the problem with Western leaders. That's the problem with the leadership of today. They will kill and do anything for a buck. They have been robbing the planet blind to maintain their way of life at the cost of tens of millions of people's lives and livelihoods and the independence of nations and governments, and destroying cultures to maintain wealth. I'm the richest country in the world. That means I have the most say. When you get mad, when America gets mad, what does she do? Immediately she turns to sanctions, because guess what? She dominates the financial system. So in words, she's telling you, I'll reduce your wealth to nothing. She stole $650 billion from Russia. I would say America and NATO, or the political wing of NATO, the EU, $650 billion, because they disagree with the West, because they wanted some semblance of economic, political, cultural, and military independence from the West. If that is not someone investing in wealth and thinking that wealth equals power, and power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and we must maintain our wealth and power at all costs and subject everybody else to it, then tell me what is. Tell me what is. But this is the mind of the people. I'm telling you this. That is why people are so hell-bent on acquiring money, because they think that happiness lies in that money. They think that their worth, their self-worth, can be measured in dollar and euro and pound denominations. And they got that from the government and the institutions that are materially, materially addicted. And they want you to be that way, to put your wealth, your trust in this money. And I'm worth $7 billion. How much wealth is enough wealth? Let's look at Bezos, $153 billion. You can't spend all that money. How much money? You just like people to say that you're worth that amount of money. Think about the eradication of poverty, diseases, and people suffering from drugs and all kinds of mental illnesses. That could have alleviated so much. But you like that title of being worth X amount of dollars. That's why America is fighting like hell. Listen, all of this is connected. That's why NATO is fighting like hell, because they understand that if the world gets off the dollar, if the world challenges the dollar, in turn it challenges the pound and the euro, which means that Western domination, Western influence, Western might, and Western wealth becomes fleeting and non-existent, excuse me. And that is a no-no. And they're willing to fight like hell and even push the world towards war. This is what we're watching in real time. You can't say it's not happening, because we're watching it. The constant escalation. This is because they're mad at Russia and China and Iran and South Africa and to a certain degree India. And then they're mad at these other nations that are starting their own currency groups and their own trading blocks, because at one time this was all under the control of London, Wall Street, and Brussels. Remember, Again, this is no coincidence that the New York Stock Exchange is tied to the London Stock Exchange, that the New York Gold Exchange is tied to the London Gold Exchange. There is no coincidence in it. This is why on every military escapade that America takes the world on, the UK is right there with her, because she's fighting for her livelihood economically and politically also. Because if the dollar falls, the pound falls. If the economy of the United States implodes, the British economy implodes. And then by extension, guess what happens? Since the European Union is a U.S. contraption, and the euro is a U.S. contraption, guess what happens to the euro and the European Union? Boom, goes the dynamite. So this gives you an insight of why it is so important for them to try to rally the troops in Vilnius, because they see their wealth fleeting. They see everything that they've thrown up against the wall is just falling off. They were hoping that something would stick, and they don't see anything sticking. They're losing. Listen, Russia is beating not just Ukraine. Russia is beating an organization that has 30 or 31 members in it, including the so-called most powerful and most influential and the most wealthiest nation in the world, the United States. Russia is outproducing them, outgunning them, have more artillery than them. Do you not think that the West is looking at this and saying, "Oh my God, our time is limited"? So they're seeing what's going on, and all while they're going through this and reinvesting money that they don't have, they also have to look at this major threat over the horizon, and they're saying to themselves, "Okay, we can't outproduce Russia. The military-industrial complex of Russia is stronger than what we thought. Russia's economy is more resilient and more independent than what we thought. Russia is more self-sufficient than what we thought. But it's this monster over the horizon that makes Russia's production capacity look like child's play. And this monster over the horizon that makes Russia's economy and Russia's military industrial complex and Russia's manufacturing capacity look like child's play is a non-Western, non-white nation. And oh boy, it is growing by leaps and bounds in technology, military, economics, politics, and they're trying to find a way to handle that. They've gotten themselves mixed up in something with Russia and in the Caucasus, and they're fearing what they see coming over that horizon, and that's the Chinese. They know it. Let me go to the comments real quick, okay? Let's see. All right. Oh, all right. I got to highlight. This is one of the channel members. All right. Naeem88, he says, excellent question. Why would we want more of the failed policies and failed leadership? That's what I said. Most people, Naeem, they don't take the time to ask these questions. They just let Joe Biden and the Western world just say anything. So they have to examine what is being said and by whom that is doing the talking. Joe Biden said that America must lead. Well, then, okay, if you say that, then you have to have some type of proof that your leadership is successful, right? So if that is the case, then we must examine the pros and the cons of your leadership and see where we are in today's standing under your leadership. And once we do that, we can either legitimize and verify that, yeah, you must lead, or we can delegitimize and remove your leadership. Well, look, all one has to do is look at the state of global affairs. Under American and UK, because don't get it twisted, listen to me good. A lot of people say, well, the UK has no military power. No, right? No. But as the UK or Britain saw that its time was limited under the sun, it attached to its child, the United States. And don't think that one is different from the other. These two are one and the same. That's why you see mostly all of the presidents have a direct kinship to the Queen or the King of Britain. This is not isolated. All right? That's not isolated. Go do, if anyone is listening to the show, go research this and tell me if I'm lying to you all. Go research it. So this is no coincidence that these people who come to power are family members to the crown in Europe and the UK. So if we look at the leadership of the UK and the United States right now, we can say that they have proven themselves unworthy of the position to lead and direct global economic and political affairs. That is a fair assessment, is that not right? Because if we did it to anybody else, we would quickly say that. Why is everybody so hesitant to say that about the people who have brought us to the brink of thermonuclear war? Huh? Man, I'm telling you, this is absolutely insane, man. And when you question them on it, and when you bring these valid points on, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to address these things. They pick and choose what they want to address. And if you do that, you can never get to a solution. Think about this. If you are suffering from cancer, or if you're suffering from some kind of disease, or AIDS or something, God forbid, and the doctor would only do a surface, like go on your surface and do surface analysis, not looking into the blood, not looking into the body, not looking into your biology, just look at the surface. You would never come to a cure, ever, or a treatment plan to at least extend the life of the body, right? If they only focused on, oh, I got a headache, or oh, I threw up last night, or my nose hurt. If they only focused on that and not the biology of the person and the science behind it, you can never come to a treatment plan or a cure. Well, that's what the people are doing politically and geopolitically. They're only addressing the surface. They never get to the meaning or the root of the thing, because the root of it is an ugly picture. But if you want to formulate a plan for treatment, you got to go to the root. You got to go to the very DNA of global politics. You got to go to the very DNA of the financial order. You got to go to the DNA of the unstable, insecure world. And you got to call an ace, and what? A spade. Put your comments in the comment section real quick, and I'm going to try to highlight them if you want to. If you have something to say, please do that. I haven't, I'm trying to learn how to do this from my phone. As you see, I'm out and about, but I want to talk to my people, and I want to talk to you all and give you the insight, and maybe have you to pause for a minute and think. Because this is what this show is about. It's about forcing people to think and not just consuming everything that everybody says. It's to force you to think, to make that gray matter start popping again. That's what we're trying to do, to make that gray matter pop again. So if you have a question, you have a statement, please put it in the comment section real quick, and we're going to try to get it on the screen real quick, okay? Now, let's go back to something while that's up there. It says, the article I was reading about NATO spent years of a proxy. Now check this out, a proxy war. They bombed Yugoslavia and balkanized it. Is that not right? They did that, right? That was an ally to Russia, right? They overthrew former Soviet republics and put in their democratized leadership in all of those former Soviet republics, and then incorporated them into NATO. Now think about this. They told Russia was wrong for having them in the Soviet Union, and then they go and get them and put them in NATO, the Western Soviet Union, right? I want you to think of this, right? And then afterwards, think about this. They go on a war spree to undermine Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, and all of these other surrounding areas. They were going to go into Iran, but Iran, they looked and said, you know what? They're going to be a tough nut to crack there. If we go in there, Iran can thump. And I'm going to tell you what was the pausing point. Really, what's the pausing point? When Israel had the war in Lebanon, and I think it was 2006, I believe it was. It could have been a little later than that. And Hezbollah put a butt kicking. It wasn't 2006, it was later. Put a butt kicking on Israel, because prior to that war, Israel said they will not halt, they will not negotiate until they accomplish their goals. This is what they were saying. They were really arrogant about it. And the United States was like, there's no need to talk to Israel. Let Israel do what it has to do. Israel has the right to defend itself. As if Hezbollah and nations, the leadership in other nations around it didn't have that same inherent right. Okay? And see, I'm telling you, man, this exceptionalism stuff is a mess. But listen, Israel went into Lebanon and got their butts handed to them by Hezbollah. And while Israel was losing the war, it was Israel who put pressure on the United States to try to put pressure on other states to try to talk to Hezbollah, because Hezbollah wasn't ready to negotiate. They wanted to finish this thing. But the U.S., after first saying that they would not put pressure on Israel to negotiate, after Israel got a butt handed to her on the battlefield, those tanks were smoking. And they were afraid to go against Hezbollah in the skies like they normally would, because they were scared that Hezbollah had acquired Panzer systems, those Russian systems. Now check this out. Afterwards, I'm giving you guys a little history lesson. I want you to go back and see if I'm lying to you all. After that took place, Israel called itself doubling down, because Hezbollah said, no, we're going to and let you leave the occupied area of Lebanon. We're not negotiating. So Israel doubled down and started bombing. And Sheikh Nasrallah, the head or the Secretary General of Hezbollah, held a meeting, and when I say a gathering in Lebanon. And he was on a big jumbotron screen, and he was talking to the people, and he told them that he had good news for them, and he wanted them to look out to the sea, to the Mediterranean, because they would witness something that was unparalleled, right? And as he talked to them, it was off the shores, miles out, it was an Israeli warship out there, and Hezbollah hit it. They hit it, and they had to limp back to occupied Palestine. All right. And when they realized that Hezbollah had new military capabilities that were supplied to them by Iran. And this is when, behind closed doors, Israel put pressure on the United States to put pressure on other states to bring Hezbollah to the negotiating table. And that's when Israel was forced to leave Lebanese territory. I'm telling you this now. Go do the research. I'm not making this stuff up. Now, what does that have to do with them not fighting Iran? Iran was the ones who trained Hezbollah. And they saw the fighting capacity of Hezbollah, and they had to think again about the IRGC. Man, if you get in there with them, these guys are something else on the battlefield. And that's what gave them their pause. And America said we would buy time. And what we would do, we would cover our tracks. And so they started Israel, the UK, the MI6, I think, MI5, whichever one is for overseas. Israeli Mossad, CIA, working with the Kurds in northern Iraq. And they were setting up bases there, and Iran was hitting them. And they were hitting them hard too. Missile strikes, artillery strikes, killing dozens of CIA agents, killing dozens of Mossad agents, killing dozens of Kurdish agents. All of this has been happening. If you go to my page, we got proof of it on Patreon. You know, we reported this when nobody else did. Now, they felt that they can set up bases, and go to a map and Google U.S. bases surrounding Iran. This is what they're trying to hem them in so that they can attack Iran from all sides. But the problem with that is now Iran is even more powerful than she was back then. So that blow will be a devastating blow for the United States. The United States, after Iran leveled 2 military bases in Iraq, U.S. military bases, U.S. had F-22s and F-35s on the go, and they were approaching Iranian airspace, and Iran had warned them off. They had radars that picked them up on there and told them that if they entered Iranian airspace, that this would be a declaration of war, and Iran would pummel every U.S. base in the region. And the F-35s and the F-22s did an about face. An about face. But you didn't hear that in the media. All right? So now they're working on, see, I'm telling you this. The empire is not as strong as you think they are. They're suffering from something. But when you got a person that has ruled for so long, let me see something. When you have, let me see the comments. All right. When you have a nation or a government or some leaders or a king or whatever that has ruled for so long, and they see their rule is coming to an end, and now there's some other system or some other governance that is rising. Man, that's hard to take. And so they realize that they're not only their rule, but their society. Because remember that this is a parasitic rule. This is a parasitic alliance. This is a parasitic system, economically, politically, and geopolitically. And without a host body, it cannot continue. Brandon Manarino said, and we're going to have him on the show sometime at the end of this month, but next month, he said, whenever he's free. All right. So he says that the U.S., the Western economic system must continue to produce debt. It must continue to expand. It must continue to gobble up. Because once the debt, the printing of money, the printing of debt stops, boom goes the dynamite. That is why you see America in all these countries. She has to find victims for the economic system. She will find it by hook or by crook to maintain her way. And she is now becoming more desperate, which means that the UK is more desperate, right? Which means what? That the European Union is more desperate because the European Union has little to no resources. The UK has little to no resources. America has ample resources, but to extract the resources, it takes an ample amount of investment money, which she does no longer have. In the nations that would invest in her, she is alienated and named them as rivals and enemies. So she's in trouble. She's in trouble. And it's getting worse by the day. She is now realizing that the winds of change, they're blowing hard on American and Western dominance and American and Western empire. We're living in a new day. This is the fall of America and the collapse of the Western world. The collapse of the Western world, without a doubt. Without a doubt, the economic, political, and geopolitical system is in turmoil, and we're living in the collapse of this. It's a very beautiful time to be a knowledgeable person, to recognize the days in which we're living in. These are the days of God. And he is exacting retribution on those who use his name and paraded across the world as though they were the just ones, when in reality, they were the villains. Man, America got some hell to pay. The Western world got some hell to pay. And even as this thing is going down, they're doubling down on failed policy. They're becoming more arrogant, and they're ignoring the not just the will of their own people, but the will of the globe. And when you get closer and closer to death, and you do that, how the hell can you expect forgiveness? Just saying I'm sorry don't mean nothing if you have not done anything to correct the problem. If a rapist is raping people, and they apprehend that rapist, and he gets before the judge, and he tells the judge and the victim, I'm sorry. Do you think that will go well with him just because he acknowledged that he was sorry to the victim and sorry to the judge? And he put no actions behind that apology? Well, if that is the case, then what makes you think that when it comes to America, or it comes to the Western world, that this is not the case with America? Huh? What makes you think that? She's not the exception to God's rules. Man, I'll stop right here for a minute so I can just tell you this. Listen, when you say you're sorry, there must be something behind that. You can't pillage, rob, rape, kill, bomb, occupy, steal, lie, deceive on an everyday basis. What did Pompeo say? I was the director of the CIA. All we did was lie, cheat, steal, rob, and kill. That's what Pompeo was saying. So if that's all you did, and you continue to do it, and yet on one end you say you're sorry, but you continue to double down on the stuff that you used to do, how in the hell can you truly believe that you'll be forgiven? The truth of the matter is, when you're arrogant and you believe that you're exceptional, you'll believe that you'll be forgiven without any tangible moves that will justify your forgiveness. And in this day and time, we're watching in real time the collapse of the Western world, the collapse of Western power, Western wealth, Western influence. And the greatest pillar of Western power in utter and total decline, that is America. This is the fall of America. On that note, let me go out the same way I always come in, with love in my heart for all of you who love truth, and know that I love you with everything in me. But the true and living God, he will always, always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hit the like button, become a subscriber, become a channel member, become a patron, do all of that, help the channel, donate, super chat, whatever you want to do, do it. And know this, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody.